What's up everyone? Welcome back to my channel. I am so pumped for today's video because we are talking all about vintage home decor. As you guys know, especially if you've been here for a while, I am a huge fan of adding vintage home decor to my space. I have always loved vintage. I've been shopping vintage for as long as I can remember, and I've learned a few tips along the way. Now, for me personally, I believe vintage really is the best way to set your home apart from others. Vintage is one of a kind. It brings this like warmth and history to your home. It just brings this character and charm that you can't get from your big box stores. And the big box stores, every quarter they are bringing in all these new items that everyone's shopping, where with vintage, it really allows your home to be special, one of a kind, and really separates you from others. Now, for those of you who are renters like myself, adding vintage home decor is the best way to bring that special charm to your space, because it's not like us as renters can go add arched doorways to our space or add, Carrara marble countertops to our kitchen. We are a little bit more limited. However, we can bring vintage home decor pieces and add that charm that you might feel from a custom home. Okay, I wanted to make sure I went over everything, so I made a little list to go over how I kind of set myself up for success when it comes to vintage shopping. Now, for me personally, I've learned along the way to be extremely picky. Being extremely picky, I personally think is so important, because I feel like this is really what allows you to really get to know your style and trust your gut. You will know when you see that piece if you absolutely can't live without it, because you're gonna get that feeling like, I can't leave this piece. It is exactly what I'm looking for. It is perfect. That's how you know. And I think being picky really helps you be able to know that feeling in your stomach that just tells you like, that's mine. That also being said, it's okay to say no to things. There's things, now there are things that I've said no to that I do regret, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have got that. Like, I can't stop thinking about it. But oftentimes, like, it's okay to say no. Now, for me personally, I've narrowed down my style and I've honed in my style so much so where the pieces that I am going for sometimes are a bit more of an investment. So saying no and being able to sleep on it, I know they're not going to be flying off the shelves, and it gives me a little bit of time to really like spend some time with myself and really know if I should get the piece, if it's impulsive, if I just am like freaking out over it. So if I can give myself time to sleep on it, I will. Being really picky and saying no only allows you to really understand yourself more and get to know yourself more, where you know when a piece really sets that little fire off in your tummy, and you know when it's something you really want. There's a few steps that I do before antique shopping, and one is I do my homework, and then the other is I go through my inventory. What do I have? What do I need? What am I looking for this trip? Like, do I need a tray? Do I need a vessel? Am I looking for artwork? What am I needing for my space? This also helps with not overspending or really having, like I said, going antique shopping can be extremely overwhelming. If you've ever walked into an antique store, there's just stuff everywhere. They have comics, they have beer handles and cups and glasses and literally so many different things. So it can be extremely overwhelming, but the more prepared you are, the better of a trip I find that I have. Now, that being said, there are going to be those times where you find that perfect piece. For example, I went shopping with my friends and I saw this little brass like flower pot, I guess you could call it. And this wasn't a piece that I was looking for, but it does fit into my color palette, which is my next tip. Creating a color palette for your space really allows you to be able to say no to things that maybe you wouldn't say no to, or you might find a spot for. I feel like when you have a color palette and a material palette, it really helps with narrowing down the things that you're buying and kind of being picky and really knowing your style and keeping a cohesive home. When you have a color palette, your pieces will be able to go from space to space to space. So I might have it in here for a little while, and then I might put it on my coffee table for a little while. I find that a color palette has been game changer when it comes to my home decor and my shopping. With that brass little flower pot, I wasn't going and looking for a brass flower pot, but I stumbled across it. So when you have a plan, or you have like a little bit of like a color palette, a material palette, and items like list that you want, I feel like this helps you keep on track for decorating your home. Now, when it comes to color palette, I like to keep a neutral home. I like to keep this for many reasons. Now, I am dipping a little bit into color. I'm loving like greens and blues. I recently found these little dishes here, and they're the blue and white. I really like mine like kind of chippy and just, you know, I know, but I like them like that. I think it adds so much history, so much like mystery to me. Like, I just think about these plates and think about all the homes that these have been in, and the conversations around these dishes. The stories that these items can tell, I'm sure, are incredible. So my vision for these when I saw them, now, like I said, I typically keep a neutral home. However, I've been dipping a little bit into adding a tiny bit of color. I do it very sparingly. But when I saw these, my vision was adding a honeycomb, or adding, you know, different things like, and putting them on a table setup. And just having these mixed in with modern plates, I feel like is my favorite way to mix in vintage with modern pieces. I find that I personally like to add a couple of vintage items mixed in with my modern. So mostly like new, fresh, modern pieces with a touch or a kiss of vintage here and there, I find is the perfect balance for me. But I have friends who have, you know, more vintage than they do modern pieces. So it just kind of depends on the look that you're going for. So another example of material palette is, I have 3 things right here. So on here I have my primitive wood, which is by far my favorite. I love adding wood to my home. I think it goes with literally everything. I love it. Then I have ceramic, and I have this like brass. I love having the different materials mixed together because I feel like this makes it feel very decorated, very professionally done, and it feels right. That's why I like to also have a material palette along with color palette. Now, my color palette is pretty much this right now. Like, it's wood, so the warmth of the wood with black and creams and brass. I hope you guys can see this. It's really hard to show. So typically when I'm out vintage shopping, I am looking for things that are in that color palette or material palette. The other tip that I want to give is do your homework before you go out shopping. Now, one way that I really like to do this is by going through vintage home decor books or Pinterest. Say you don't have home decor books, get on Pinterest, start looking through photos and see what is standing out to you and what you like are after. A lot of times in professionally designed spaces, you are going to see vintage more times than not, I think, or at least that's what I've noticed. So I like to go through my books and kind of notice like, ooh, I like really like this tray with the flowers on it, or I might like that little ceramic vase that those florals are in. Like, go through this and kind of see like, I need that for my bathroom space, or you know, what are you looking for? Maybe it's a chair, maybe it's a side table, whatever it is. Get yourself prepared by making a little list of things that you're after when you're out shopping, and this really helps kind of keep you focused, keep you organized, and keep you from overspending or feeling overwhelmed. Once I've gone through my home decor books, I like to make a list on my phone, so when I'm out shopping, I can go back on it and be like, oh yeah, I wanted that little tray for the bathroom so I can put a flower on it, or you know, whatever it is, and have a list so when you're out shopping, it keeps you kind of organized. Like I said, there's gonna be those pieces, because when you're out vintage shopping, it is kind of like treasure hunting, I feel. You will find those pieces that you can't live without and you have to get there and you weren't looking for because you didn't know that you needed them or you wanted them. But there's gonna be that list that you're gonna wanna make so that you can keep your eye out, because a lot of times I am so overwhelmed and so overstimulated when I'm out shopping that I forget that I'm looking for the tray for the flowers in the bathroom, if that makes sense. Now, I want to talk about artwork because artwork is the most recent thing that I have been after and the most exciting. Like I said, I'm extremely picky because I want my home to feel like us, and I want it to remind me of places we've been or things that Zach and I have done together, and I just find that this is the best way that I get that feeling, that home feeling. And I really like to feel in our space. I want our space to feel a certain way. So for me, it's been really difficult to add artwork because I don't always feel super connected to the artwork. Okay, I have 3 pieces of vintage artwork that I want to share with you guys, because that's all the artwork that I have so far. So the first one I have in this ornate gold frame, and it's just a river and some trees. And this really reminded me of Oregon, and back when Zach and I would go float the river back in Oregon, and I felt really connected to this one. I also really love that it's small because I could put this in a kitchen, or you know, in certain little like nooks or different little areas that need something small. I could put it on a bedside table or different things like that. So this piece, I love the size, and then I was super connected to the oil painting. The next one is the same kind of vibe. I fell in love with this piece because it reminded me of our travels to Europe, to France, and Italy, really. And I just, oh my gosh, I just absolutely fell in love with this piece, and I had to have it. And the funny story about this is my friend actually got her hands onto it first, and then she ended up selling it to me. But being connected to your artwork, I feel like takes you back to that time. It's almost like a scent, like a perfume scent or a scent of any kind that kind of transports you. I feel like artwork can be that way as well if you're really picky with your artwork. The last piece that I have to share is this pencil drawing of this woman. I think I've shared this one before with you guys, but this one really reminded me of my aunt, and I find it super inspiring because my aunt is one of my favorite people in the world. I love her so much. I adore her, and she inspires me so much, always has, ever since I was a little girl. So this picture, I don't know what it was about it, but it really reminded me of my aunt, and I just had to have it, even though that's not my aunt. But that really is how I buy my artwork and how I feel connected to it. And as you guys have seen on my channel, I haven't shared a ton of artwork. The pictures on our wall are Zach and I have like a candelabra on our wall. But when it comes to art, I'm not one to just buy art to fill a space. I personally, for my own space, have to feel some sort of connection. And I think vintage artwork really helps me feel that way. The other thing about vintage shopping is be patient. I walk out of vintage stores, antique stores, more times without items in my hands than I do with items in my hands. Kind of goes with the same saying as like being picky. I want to make sure the items that I'm bringing into my home are giving me the feeling that I want or giving me the look that I want. Being picky, being okay with saying no, walking out empty-handed is all okay. With the different materials, I want to show you guys a couple more examples. As you guys know, I love organic pieces, stoneware, different things like that. So I have a ton of different trays, discs, limestone, all different kinds of stuff because I love these. I think that they look good in every room with everything. So I always have my eye out for pieces like this, and then mixing it with different, I love brass. I will always love brass. I love the way it patinas. I feel like it has so much history. It's the same kind of feeling as I feel about really anything that's patinaed. The stories behind them, oh my gosh, it's just like, you can't get that at a box store. You can't. So this piece, when I was out shopping, I just like had a vision of some ranunculus. My favorite flowers are ranunculus and peonies. Could you see it? Oh my gosh. The other thing, when you are out vintage shopping, Give yourself some time. Give yourself a few hours. Sometimes some of my favorite stores, I will walk through once, I'll walk through again, and I'll walk through again, because I swear every time I notice something I didn't notice the first time. Look at everything, take everything in, really kind of play like, okay, if you pick up, say, this item, for instance, what would you do with this item? Immediately, I think of florals. I came home, I filled it up with water, make sure it would fill up with water. But also by itself on a stack of books is so beautiful. Right now I'm using it as a bookend. So beautiful. Give yourself a lot of time to be able to look at each item and be able to brainstorm the item and see what you can do and what you can make of it. My last tip that I want to give for your vintage or antique shopping is to really get to know yourself, get to know your style, get to know your feelings. Like, what are you gravitating towards? What is your style? Do you still feel confused? Do you feel like good in the direction that you're going? Because I feel like this really helps with vintage shopping. These are the charming pieces you're bringing to your home. These are the conversation pieces that people are gonna talk about when they come over. My sister-in-law came over to our house and she picked up this artwork. I have tons of new vessels and new items in our home, but she picked up the vintage piece. So to me, I feel like vintage pieces are that conversation piece and the pieces that wow your guests. All right, you guys, those are my tips for vintage shopping. I hope the next time you go out shopping, you are able to use some of these tips and find some of those pieces to bring that charm to your home, that history to your home, that conversation to your home, and just have fun with it. Let me know down in the comments what you're after right now, what vintage piece you're after, and how you guys, or if maybe you have tips that I didn't cover that help you with your vintage, thrift, antique shoppings. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in a couple days with another. Bye.